Continuing with part 5, the crucifixion date, page 29. D. The ancient position of Jewish Passover. Number 1. The Mosaic rules. In all the ancient references to the Passover, the 14th day of the first month is emphasized as the day on which the Passover was kept. There were no double Passover days in Old Testament times. If ceremonial defilement prevented an individual from observing the regular festival, then he was commanded to keep the service on the 14th day of the following month. Thus is pointed out the importance of the day, which was numbered according to the moon. That is, the days of the month were the same as the days of the moon. Indeed, the Hebrew word Odesh for month means new moon. It was the actual new moon, not any fictitious new moon, that regulated the great festivals, for it was an observed moon or horned crescent moon. On the other hand, the barley harvest ripened by the sun marked out the Paschal month, for the first fruits of ripe barley must be waved in the temple on the 16th day of Nisan, when Israel came into the land. In other words, the Jewish feast period began with the month of barley harvest, and its Paschal moon or Nisan or Abib was the appointed moon of barley harvest. The agricultural calendars of Palestine show that April is the month for the ripening barley. From the time of harvest, or the middle of April, to the middle of September, there is neither rain nor thunder. The same story in agriculture is engraved in the Gezer calendar stone, whose fourth named month has been translated barley harvest. In Palestine, March is the month of the latter rain, which lasts until the first week of April. After this, the barley corn ripens rapidly. However, the Mosaic ceremony connected with the barley harvest, so vital in its control of the Jewish year, did not long survive the first century of the Christian era because of the dispersion of the Jews. This period of persecution, which followed the fall of the Second Temple, ultimately brought about a fixed calendar for the Jew, one that was based upon an entirely different rule of intercalation than the ancient barley harvest regulation. About the 8th century AD, the Karaites arose to oppose the influence of the Rabbinite fixed calendar and to restore the barley harvest schedule as the important index to regulate the leap year. This controversy over the Hebrew calendar raged for several centuries. It really represented a rivalry between Palestine and Babylon for the prerogative of keeping time for the Jewish nation. Though the Karaites were biblically correct, in the end, the Babylonian Jews gained control of the calendar and Karaism dwindled. Since 1780, the Karaites have been slowly compromising with the Rabbanites on this question, and today follow a fixed calendar. Number 2. 4th century changes. After the destruction of Jerusalem, the unity of the scattered Jews more than ever depended upon the festivals being observed on the same days. But two vital changes overtook the ancient Hebrew Passover. First, as pertained to the day, the persecution of the Jews had made impossible the use of fire signals in Judea for announcing the new month. Therefore, in order to keep with certainty a feast day in common with the homeland, two festival days, particularly for the Passover, became the custom among the scattered people. The Jews of Palestine and those among the Greek churches kept Passover on the 14th day of the moon, while the outlying groups of Jews kept on the safe side by both observing the Passover on the day appointed by the Scriptures and on the day following, called Second Feast Day of the Diaspora. In this manner, the Passover came to be observed on both Nisan 14 and 15. In the end, the computer calendar of the Jews preferred Nisan 15 for the feast, and it is a feature of the modern Jewish calendar of today. This early controversy in Jewry formed the background of the bitter conflict over Easter, which began in the 2nd century among the Christians. The argument was still over the same question, the 14 or 15 of Nisan. At length, in the 14th century, the Council of Nicaea met this issue. The Christian feast was placed on the first Sunday after the Jewish Passover, which was confirmed as lunar 14 of the first month. This was appointed as the first full moon following the spring equinox in place of the full moon of barley-harvest, which, on account of persecution, had fallen into neglect. And this actually was accomplished again to the decree of Nicaea in 425 AD. Second, as pertained to the month, this decree of Nicaea was really the cause of the large series of March Passovers which characterized the calendar of Dionysius in 532. The Dionysian tables were the basis upon which the Church built up her own ecclesiastical calendar. In the discussion that arose in 1582 over the Julian calendar, scholars say plainly that the so-called Paschal moons of the Dionysian tables came largely in Adar instead of Nisan, that they were in fact principally March Passover. This change in the Paschal month is vital in the relation of Jewish time to the Julian calendar in the 1st century, for it is the Passover day which ties Jewish time to our common calendar. It is to be particularly noted that if this Passover day is in March, it will occur upon a different day of the week from a Passover in April of the same year. Consequently, all the March Passover dates in the 1st century tables of moons given in the general discussion of the crucifixion date are thereby called in question. And it is therefore evident that if the Passover month is wrong, the determinate date is bound to be wrong. Continuing with E, translation of the new moon for Nisan. Number 1, the moon's motion. In order to understand any astronomical argument which may pertain to the crucifixion date, it is necessary to review the relation of the moon to the sun and earth. The path of the sun in the heavens is a great circle called the ecliptic. A belt 8 degrees wide on each side of the ecliptic is known as the zodiac, or the Mazzaroth. This particular width was chosen by the ancient because the path of the moon and all the principal planets keep within this belt, and it is therefore a very convenient circle of reference. And in reference to this, the longitude and latitude of a star is reckoned in degrees, minutes, and seconds. About 800 years before Christ, the zodiac was divided into 12 parts called signs, at which time the signs were separated from the primitive constellations of the same name. Each sign is 30 degrees in length. The signs kept the same name as the original constellations, all being named after some animal, with the exception of Libra. The ones frequently referred to in this discussion are Pisces, Aries, and Taurus in the spring, and Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio in the autumn. Another great circle in the heaven is the celestial equator, which is an imaginary projection on the sky of the equator of the Earth. At 2 points, 180 degrees apart, known as the equinoxes, the path of the sun crosses the celestial equator. At those times, day and night are equal. When the Earth is nearest the sun, as at perihelion, about December 31, her orbital motion is most rapid, and at aphelion, the opposite point of the ecliptic, about June 30th, her motion is slowest. Any motion of the Earth, of course, influences the moon's motion. The moons travel around the earth every 29.5 days, and in that same time passes up and down in its path through the zodiac belt. Sometimes she is north of the sun, sometimes south. Her rate of travel through the zodiac is irregular, sometimes fast, sometimes slow, because of her distance from the sun and earth. When the moon is between the sun and earth, this position is called conjunction, and the moon is new. At this time, the moon cannot usually be seen for a period from 1 to about 4 days. When the earth is between the sun and moon, this relation is called opposition, and the moon is full. All of these facts and figures have a direct bearing upon the time it takes the moon to come into sight after conjunction, and they therefore take on a definite relation to the moon's changing rate of motion. From new moon to full moon, from conjunction to opposition, the moon travels through the first half of her monthly circuit around the earth. The first half of the moon's circuit was of great importance to the Jews because, number one, their new moon feasts, which were gauged by the conjunction and its attendant phases. Number two, the Passover sacrifice right after the opposition or full moon of Nisan. And number three, the 3 special days in the fall, the new moon day of Tisri, or the 7th month, or Rosh Hashanah, the Day of Atonement, and the Feast of Tabernacle, which were connected with the new and full moon of Tisri. The true time of the moon in this period from conjunction to opposition run in a circle or cycle of 14 moons as follows. And this is presenting actually the moon changing rate of motion in 14 moon cycle. And we encourage you to return to this page and study it. This is actually for 1930-1931. And the 14 moon cycles are indicated by month, going here from April to finishing here in December and starting again in January and finishing in May. And so those are periods from the new moon, full moon. It starts with the new moon, full moon, period from new moon to full moon, and period from conjunction to phases. And these are astronomical. They can be found actually on the USNO and different other American ephemeris. In this case, it's from the American ephemeris. The full moon cycle was computed by subtracting each new moon date from the next full moon date. Continuing, in a cycle of 14 lunar months, in Table 4, the period of time in days, hours, in minutes, in column 3, the period from new to full moon, represent the actual time it takes the moon to go from new moon to full moon. In this cycle, she travels her half circuit around the earth from high accelerated velocity or speed to slow and back again to high. In 14 rounds, she completes her cycle, which represent the moon's varying motion. So we can see here the accelerated velocity represents 13 days, 22 hours, and 21 minutes, where the slow is 15 days, 14 hours, and 18 minutes. So it does make a difference when it's time to calculate the moon motions and establish the biblical calendar. From age to age in Secula Seclorum, she has kept up this 14 moon cycle, the periods varying slightly each moon or month. The translation cycle under column 4, which you can return to, represent the actual time in days, hours, and minutes it takes the moon to go from conjunction, when she cannot be seen, to her phases or first appearance. The phases always mark the sunset beginning of each new month for the nation using the lunisolar year. These translation periods also run in 14 moon cycle, which follows fairly closely the longer waves of the moon from conjunction to opposition. But the nation mentioned here do not include the Jewish nation in Palestine, as they were following the Horn Crescent. When the moon is slow, then the translation period is long, over 3 days. When the moon is fast, her translation is short, usually a little over a day. And there is a diagram following here, which we will bypass because it's not clear enough, but you can expect to have a look at it as we continue the explanation on this particular page here. In the phases curve, we see the combined result of all the causes which conspire to hasten or retard the visibility of the nascent moon. Further, Regam names 3 causes as affecting the first appearance of the new moon. Number 1, longitude. Number 2, latitude. Number 3, anomaly, or the moon's angular distance from perigee. The longitude refers to the moon's distance from the vernal equinox as measured on the ecliptic, and the latitude to a position of the zodiac north or south of the ecliptic. Maimonides also give these same 3 factors, summing them up into one conclusion: the knowing of the positions of the sun, the moon, and the moon's node, respectively. You have all necessary elements then to establish by calculation whether the new moon will be visible or not. Very important. Avelius has also left on record a complete description of the new moon and her phases. He likewise presents the same 3 causes, though differently described, which result in the moon visibility early or late. The obliquity of the sphere leading to long or short setting. Number 2, the position of the conjunction, whether it is near the northern part of the zodiac or not. Number 3, the relation of the moon to perigee, that is, her anomaly. He names Pisces, Aries, and Taurus as being sign of long setting, and Virgo, Libra, and Scorpio as sign of short setting. Ferguson also testified the same when he said that the ecliptic sets slowest in Aries and fastest in Libra. A similar statement from Ferguson being printed in the Midnight Cry. We shall see this contrasting relation of the moon to these opposing signs, Aries and Libra, worked out exactly as specified by astronomy in the event of the Crucifixion and the October 22nd date in 1844. Avelius further shows how these various causes or factors conform to the moon's motion. But if the causes mentions advancing the quick coming forth of the moon do not always conspire, but even one is lacking, then on the next day after the interlunar period, this first phases at length appears, but with 2 requisite causes absent. It can happen that finally the first phases of the moon may fall in sight on the 3rd day, but with all these conditions deficient, accelerating the rising of the moon, then this first appearance of the moon finally happens in the 4th day after conjunction with the sun. Then Avelius adds the important observation that the 3 requisite causes for a quick phases, as now told, commonly very rarely appear, so that the moon is in the sign of long setting, as in Aries, in perigee, and in the northern border, plainly in the time of conjunction of phases. Equally important is still another citation from the same paragraph that the same rising of the moon does not commonly happen on the 1st day after the interlunar period or translation, but at length on the 2nd, often also on the 3rd and 4th. This is plain to all observing her. In harmony with this last statement, Scaliger shows that the Jews took a later moment for the moon phases. And this is very important because, as we show with our study, that there is definitely a big difference between the way the people were observing the moon, especially the Palestinian Jew, compared with the Babylonian Jew. We're told here that the Jewish, Arabic, Samaritan new moons usually exceed the size of the phases, that is, the first slender streak of the moon, so that the civil new moons of the lunar month are of a triple kind. The Attic as from conjunction, the Gallipic from the waning of the moon, and the Jew, Samaritan, and Arab from the shape of the moon from the 3rd day, I say, which again comes back to what we have seen, that shape of the moon is the horn crescent. With these two authorities on the moon phases, both Geminius in the 1st century BC and Ailes in the 19th century agree. The three causes of an early or late phases, as given in the foregoing citation, have all entered into the visibility test for the first appearance of the moon after conjunction, as outlined by those recently studying the computation of time in the 1st century. But it is noticeable that in the result given, though many moons have been observed, a translation period extending to the 3rd or 4th day after conjunction is seldom seen. Usually, the results are from the 1st to the 2nd day, and thus are contrary to the testimony of Hevelius, Geminus, Scaliger, and Ailes. The phases often appear in the modern Jewish calendar even on the day of conjunction. What it says here is simply the way the calendar has been changed. And we know for a fact that the Jew now, the Rabbinical Jew, do not observe the horn crescent, simply because of their calculation of Passover. They do observe the first crescent, and we have already demonstrated that in this writing. The phases often appear in the modern Jewish calendar even on the day of conjunction. Questions have already arisen as to the validity of these visibility tests. One question yet remains to be answered. On what day of Nisan shall we place the full moon days belonging to the year of Christ's ministry? And here we have the following tables represent the new and full moon of the year 28 to 33 AD, which embrace all the years within which the ministry of Christ is usually located. We invite you to look at those particular graphic. However, they're not very good to look at because they're totally unclear. So we shall pass now to the next page. And these are available in PDF, so anybody can check them out if they wish to do so, and on our website beside the audio. So here we have how the moon was called Bid because they were white by the light of the moon when it was full. The night between the 13th and the 14th is called Badar because of in it the moon is full and her light complete. Number 2, calculation of the moon phases according to ancient practice and in harmony also with later testimony. The full moon is marked on the day of Nisan 13 as in table 4, and the days are numbered back to Nisan 1. And if the moon falls between sunset and midnight, the full moon dates are placed early on the 13th of Nisan, between sunset and midnight. Now notice the year 33 AD in connection with the table number 5, postulate 1. The full moon time was April 3 at 1727, Jerusalem Civil Time, on Friday. This means 5:27 p.m. Friday, April 3. The place of the moon is therefore marked near the sunset of that day, calling it Nisan 13. Then count back by common calendar days to Thursday, March 19, on the 13th hour of which is conjunction. Number the day from forward to Nisan 1, which is Sunday. From the 13th hour on March 19 to the sunset beginning the Nisan 1 is the period from conjunction to phases known as the translation period. A glance showed this to be 2 whole days and a few hours over. And this is being corrected when we do the 11th hour. If anything, those dates when they fall at the 11th hour and later, definitely the phases will not be seen until the day after, not the same day. And that is indicated in USNO by their phases of the moon and their fraction of the moon illuminated. It's called actually the 11th hour, and it's easy to see that one does not look like it's agreeable, the phases of the moon and the fraction of the moon sometimes do not agree because of the time, because of the period of time that it takes for the moon to travel. From the Nautical Almanac, the sunset time for March 21 is found, which coincides with the beginning of Nisan 1. This is 6:10 p.m. from the 13th hour on March 19 to sunset 6:10 p.m., beginning Nisan 1 are 2 days, 4 hours, and 56 minutes for the translation period of Nisan 1 in the year 33 AD. This means that the full moon date in the year 33 AD was on Friday, Nisan 13, and that the Passover day fell on Nisan 14, Saturday, April 4th. Father Ringham also agrees with April 4th Saturday as being the Passover in 33 AD. The real error in Father Ringham's table consists in the fact that his Passover in the year 28, 29, 31, and 33 are a month too early. That also will take into consideration the dating of the Passover. On the other hand, a full moon as early as April 3 could not be a barley harvest moon in Judea, and is therefore too early for the Passover feast. A moon later places the Passover in 33 AD on Sunday. This is following the rule of the Palestinian Jew now, not the Babylonian Jew and the Rabbinite today. It's not following the Rabbinite today. The same manner of figuring is operative for 30 AD. The full moon date is after sunset of April 6, which in Jewish time is Friday, in which we must call Nisan 13 according to postulate 1, Saturday. Then becomes a Passover on Nisan 14, so then the year 30 AD falls out because Friday is Nisan 13 and not 14. In that year, the years 32, 29, and 28 likewise fall out because their Passover are on Tuesday, Monday, and Wednesday, respectively. And the year 33 AD is out because Friday is Nisan 13. This then leaves 31 AD as the only year which the period of Christ's public ministry with a Passover on Friday. It came on April 27, Nisan 14, meeting all the requisite factors. The translation period of the moon has been described again and again all through the Christian era, specifically or especially by the Jewish chronologists. Evelius put it this way, and it's in Latin, so we're going to go to the translation. How these phases or observations should be established, their rabbins and their more recent chronologers abundantly report. Possibly, Evelius was referring particularly to Maimonides who lived in the early 13th century and worked out by spherical trigonometry the translation period of the moon. This is not only based on higher mathematics, but also on the complex astronomy of the moon, to which modern research testifies as the deep things of astronomy. Nearly all the recent articles on the date of the crucifixion include a discussion of a simple form of Maimonide complex figures known as the visibility test. It would consequently seem as if modern application of this Jewish secret makes the translation period in general too short. On this basis, that is, if we should shorten the translation period, say by 1 day, all the full moon days on table 5 would be thrust forward by 1 day to Nisan 14. And as Father Ringham complained in his application of the problem, there should be no Fridays in the series. By this same plan of the full moon on Nisan 14 throws out the years 28 and 29, because in the case of 28 AD, the translation period would be only about 1.5 hours, and for 29 AD, 21 hours, both too short. Therefore, such an hypothesis falls out, that is, that the full moon occurs on the Passover day itself. The postulate itself that the full moon date must be placed on Nisan 13 in harmony with history is thus its own proof, for it is the only position of the full moon providing sufficient time for a translation period or for 1 to 4 days. On the basis of this postulate alone, astronomy can tie Jewish time to the Julian calendar. The translation period of the moon leading to Nisan 1 in the year 31 AD was 3 days, 3 hours, 33 minutes. This was one of the moon's long interlunar intervals. Not being the longest, it came well within the realms of his historical testimony, which allows the moon from 1 to 4 days in which to appear after conjunction, and that often also on the 3rd and 4th day. This period of a little more than 3 days was but one of a cycle in which the moon's motion swings interminably fast and slow between her limits of acceleration. To the astronomer, the phases of the moon on April 14, 31 AD was just an ordinary first appearance, more ordinary than as if her showing had been quick and rapid. But on April 25th, Julian day number 1732495, towards midnight, the moon was in eclipse. And on Friday, April 27, at noonday, the unaccountable darkness of the sun occurred, marking the death of the Son of God. The following vital facts in reference to the Passover of the Crucifixion are made known by this simple astronomical method of translating the moon of Nisan as illustrated on Table 5. We're finishing with Nisan 14 was Lunar 14, the Passover day. Nisan 14 was the day after the fulling of the moon. Nisan 14 was the Crucifixion day. Therefore, according to Table 5, the only day of the entire series that answered to all these stipulations was April 27, 31 AD. This was presented by Grace Amadon, but it's always referring to the Millerites' studies. It's not their own studies, it's the Millerite study, though their conclusion at times shows that it's their own conclusion. Again, this was presented by Grace Amadon on the crucifixion date.